Chris Paul is not only one of the best point guards in the NBA today, but one of the greatest point guards in the history of the league. After the Rockets traded CP3 and the $120 million left on his contract to OKC, it was thought that CP3 was a player who was on the decline. In his last year in Houston, Chris Paul was averaging just 15 points and 8 assists a game on 42% shooting, which is very low by his standards. It was thought by many people, myself included, that Chris Paul at the age of 35 was a player whose career was going downhill. While CP3 proved in OKC that he was a veteran that still had a lot left in the tank, CP3 excelled. He put up just under 18 points and 7 assists a game this year, and his field goal percentage improved from just under 42% to 49%. CP3's excellent season earned him his 10th All-Star game, where at just 6 feet tall, CP3 was able to do this. Chris Paul not only excelled from an individual standpoint, but from a team standpoint. Almost no one had the Thunder in the playoffs before the season started. I myself had a feeling that the Thunder would be somewhat competitive, but I only saw an 8th seed at best. Well, OKC extremely overachieved this year, finishing as the 5th seed in the West before the season got suspended. Not too long ago, it was reported that some in the Knicks front office believed CP3 could bring that winning culture that he brought to OKC over to New York. So, should the Knicks trade for Chris Paul? We're going to break down the pros and cons of a potential CP3 trade. Before we get started, if you like content like this, I got plenty more of them on the channel. Please subscribe to my channel More Hoops. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before July, and your support is really appreciated. Before we start, I'd like to make a shout out to Lord Tinnitus 718, if I'm saying his name right. This video actually comes from a request he made in the comments. He wanted a video on the pros and cons of a CP3 trade. So, if you ask, you shall receive. And by the way, if you want a video on any topic, just let me know in the comment section. Lastly, go follow Knicks Culture on Instagram because he has some dope Knicks related content. And make sure you follow his other Instagram page, NBA Depth Check, where he has some other dope NBA content as well as a podcast. So, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to give the mic to Anthony from Knicks Culture to explain the pros of a Chris Paul trade.
Hey, what's up everyone? So I'm going to do the run through of the reasons why Chris Paul could be a good trade piece for the Knicks. There are a couple reasons why I believe this. First off, Chris Paul was an all-star this past season. The Knicks last had an all-star in the 2017-2018 NBA season in Kristaps Porzingis. We all know that ship has sailed for the Knicks, so it's time for them to get an all-star caliber player that can lead this team. Second, he can have a huge impact on the youth of the Knicks. The first player I wanted to talk about is RJ Barrett. I like comparing what can happen to RJ with what we just saw happen to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai went from a player many thought after his rookie season would be a 3-and-D player at best, to a player that can potentially be an annually all-star talent. He showed little offensive promise in his first season, while RJ showed much more. I honestly think Chris Paul could help shape RJ into a player similar to one Paul recently played with in Harden. I believe RJ could become a more team-oriented version of Harden, and this is more possible with the help of Paul. The next player I want to talk about is Mitchell Robinson. This past season, it was hard to find many positives in Knicks games, but one good thing we saw this season were Mitchell Robinson lobs. Almost every game, he would be thrown a lob and would somehow always put it in the basket even if it was a horrible pass. With a player like Chris Paul, who arguably was at his best when he was the playmaker of the Lob City, having Griffin and Jordan, Paul could help give so many extra opportunities to Mitch by finding him in every situation he's open. Maybe he won't give Mitch that extra push to the next level by expanding his game, but it'll definitely get Mitch more opportunities on the offensive end. Lastly, if the Knicks draft a point guard in this draft, having him be the understudy of a mind like Chris Paul will do wonders for that rookie. After Chris Paul leaves the team, we can probably be comfortable in knowing we have a backup point guard who has been training under Chris Paul for this moment and will give it his all. My next point is just his overall impact on whatever team he goes to. Every team that he has gone to in his career has instantly become drastically better because of him. The Hornets were no longer a joke in the league when he went there. The Clippers became a championship caliber team. The Rockets became the only team people thought could stop arguably the greatest team ever in the Warriors. Most recently, the Thunder, who were given a 0.2% chance to make the playoffs in October, have proven everybody wrong and are now the 5th seed in the Western Conference. He is similar to LeBron in this aspect in that wherever he goes, success comes with it. Even if he gets worse physically because of his age, his mind will stay and will be what can help push any team, in this case the Knicks, to the next level. So my last point is more for the future of the Knicks. It's widely known that players would prefer to go to a team that has proven some level of success. One of the main reasons the Knicks didn't get KD was because of lack of success, while the Nets had just come off a playoff stint with a young team. By adding Paul, not only does the current team develop into a better team, but by being a better team, more players will want to come to New York. Another reason for how he can help bring in free agents is due to his role as the president of the Players Association. This role has given him exposure to countless players that he has most likely built relationships with. With those relations, more players will feel comfortable coming to the Knicks, and this team could be dangerous in the next couple of seasons. So my final verdict is that I do think we should go after Chris Paul, because even if his basketball skills will fade, his mind won't, and it'll help develop RJ, Mitch, and potential rookies either way. His contract is horrible. We can still sign a player to around the 20 to 30 million contract with CP3 on team if we balance cash and trade. So we still have an opportunity to get value in free agency.
So, now that you've gotten the pros of a CP3 trade, I'm going to explain why I think trading for CP3 is a terrible idea. The first reason why trading for CP3 is a bad idea is that CP3's elite level of production is unsustainable. Yeah, I said it, it's unsustainable. CP3 may have been an all-star this year, but let's not forget that CP3 ain't no spring chicken. He's been in the league since 2005, making him a 15-year veteran. At some point, a fall-off is inevitable, and I think that's coming sooner rather than later. He's also injury-prone. Now, to his credit, CP3 did do a good job of staying healthy this season, but he's missed at least 21 games every year in the last 3 years before this one. Just imagine how disastrous it would be for the Knicks to take on CP3's humongous contract and he completely falls off a cliff or misses most of the year with an injury. CP3 was already starting to show some decline last year with the Rockets when he only shot 42% from the field. Now, he did have a nice bounce back year with OKC, but as the Knicks, do you really want to take the risk that he could sustain this high level of play? At age 35, we know a major decline is coming soon. Now, I know what some people are thinking. There's no way he's going to fall off because he was an all-star this year. Well, guess what? Just because CP3 is coming off an all-star campaign doesn't mean he can't just completely fall off next year. It wouldn't be the first time. Look at Michael Conley and the Utah Jazz. Last offseason, the Jazz traded for a 31-year-old Mike Conley coming off a season where he averaged 21 points and 6 assists a game. The Jazz thought that trading for Conley would finally move the Jazz from second-round exits to legit championship contenders. Instead, Conley fell off a cliff, and that trade is looking like a major dud. In fact, Michael Conley was so god-awful this season that the Jazz decided to bench him. If you're the Knicks, do you really want to take the chance that this same thing can happen to you? The Knicks have gambled on many former All-Stars before, like Joakim Noah, for example. Let's not make CP3 the latest former All-Star that the Knicks signed, and he completely falls off, and we're left with his awful contract. And speaking of his awful contract, that brings us to the next major comment. CP3 undeniably has one of the worst contracts in the entire league. I don't care how good CP3 has played this year. He still isn't worth the $85 million that's due to him over the next 2 seasons. CP3 is owed $41 million next season, and he has a player option of $44 million due next season, and there's no doubt that he's going to opt in on that. The salary cap for 2022 is set to be about $125 million. So $44 million is about 35% of the entire salary cap. To me, I wouldn't give a player that much money unless they were at least a top 10 player in the NBA. If the Knicks trade for CP3, they're going to have very limited cap space in the next 2 off seasons. Now, while the Knicks don't have a shot in hell at getting Giannis, the cap room is still valuable. That cap room could be for the Knicks to sign a multitude of key role players, or they could use that cap room to take on bad contracts with draft picks. Going back to the last point, if CP3 falls off, he becomes a major albatross on the team because his salary will kill our cap room while his play on the court won't justify the contract. It'll be like the Joakim Noah contract all over again. If you're on the Knicks, why would you take a risk like that? The next con is that I don't believe the Knicks can trade for CP3's contract without giving up assets for him. When the Thunder traded for CP3's contract, his value was at an all-time low. There was about $120 million left on it, and CP3 was thought to be a declining player. The Thunder bought low on CP3's contract, and now they're looking to sell high now that he had an all-star year. Even before the season started, it was reported that OKC was going to try to leverage CP3 as an asset. So I highly doubt that they're going to just give him away for expiring contracts. Now that CP3 has played well, I'm sure OKC is going to look to cash in. They're probably going to ask for a first-round pick in return, or at the very least, one of the Knicks' young players like Frank Ntilikina or Kevin Knox. To me, this would be a huge mistake. Again, how many times are the Knicks going to acquire washed-up vets before they realize that that strategy doesn't work? In 2013, the Knicks traded a first-round pick to Toronto for Andrea Bargnani. Now, Bargnani didn't make the team better at all. He was injury-prone, and the Knicks ended up giving their lottery pick to the Raptors. That's just one of several examples. Look, there's no doubt in my mind that if the Knicks trade for Chris Paul, they're going to end up getting absolutely fleeced. We'd be literally giving the Thunder assets to take a horrible contract off their hands. If anything, we should be the ones getting draft picks back. From OKC's perspective, I don't think they trade CP3 unless they're getting picks. They're not desperate to trade him. CP3 has had a huge positive effect on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he's led OKC to the playoffs. I don't think they trade him without getting back assets, and if you're the Knicks, there is no way you can do that. Lastly, and perhaps the most important reason why I say no to a Chris Paul trade is that I think he can hurt the development of our young players. Now, yes, I know that sounds ridiculous because CP3 is a great mentor, but the Knicks need their young players to get as much burn as possible. CP3 is a player who you're going to have to play at least 27 minutes a game. If the Knicks draft a point guard with their upcoming lottery pick, that's playing time that he will be taking away from him. I've already said before on this channel that I'm all in on drafting LaMelo Ball with the #1 pick. If we draft Ball, we want to give him at least 30 minutes a game so he can grow and develop. We're going to stunt his growth by relegating to just 20 minutes a game on the bench behind a veteran point guard for 2 years. If the Knicks want to develop a point guard, just sign an old veteran like Jared Jack that won't take up too much playing time and will still be a locker room presence. But don't take on a point guard who isn't a long-term solution, but is going to end up playing big-time minutes. So ultimately, I say no. Trading for CP3 is just way too risky. Now I get that he can make the team a lot better because he's a winning player, but look at the risk. He can get hurt, he can become an albatross on his team and stunt the growth of our draft picks. I would prefer for us to just roll with our young players next year and continue the rebuild. So me and Anthony gave our cases. Now I want you guys to tell me in the comment section if you think trading for CP3 is a good idea. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, tell me in the comments what topic you want the next video to be on. Thanks for watching.